Okay. So this session we're going to do question and answers as well. So I thought perhaps we would start with questions so far before I went into any new material. How are you going? Do you have any questions about the process or anything that's happening or the content?
I was thinking about rebirth, and I have a question regarding that. If a behavior is a decision of the mind, right? Sometimes. Okay, and behavior is something that is also inherited from the parents?
Okay, maybe, yeah.
Then it contradicts, because the body is for sure inherited. Some like you see that the child is born, and I don't know, the nose is very similar to and also I thought about behavior. But if a mind goes through a path, and the baby is the behavior, and also
the appearance,
is inherited from the parents, and it contradicts.
It doesn't, but I see why you would think that, definitely. So of course we genetically look a little bit like our parents, and of course behaviorally we act a little bit like our parents, for better or for worse, right? Of course that is a true thing, and Buddhism doesn't say no, genetics doesn't exist. Of course it does, but it's a condition, right? It's one of the conditions. It's not the substantial cause. The substantial cause for the substantial cause for your body of this life, is the karma and the sperm and the egg of your parents, the form, right? But the way that you experience form, what illnesses you do or don't have, so, your whole vast array of genetics you might wind up having. Why did you wind up with the specific ones and your brothers and sisters slightly different? And even if you're twins, sometimes there's slight differences in the way that you are in your body, the way that you experience your body, the aches and pains or the strengths, so the body itself, the matter, that's from your folks.
But behavior
but your
connected
behavior
to the mind. No?
Of course, behavior is connected to the mind. Of course it is. But then you have conditions in this life that either reinforce behaviors you came in with or pacify behaviors you came in with. Like, for example, I think of my own weird habits as a kid. This is a useful thing for us to think about. Weird habits you had when you were little. So when I was little, I didn't want to kill anything, right? There was this giant pile of ants in my backyard, and I thought they were my friends, right? And the neighbor would want to kill them all, right? Because they're ants, yes. And, I had this real sort of soft heart, but because my father loves to fish, right? He loves to fish, and I love my father, I sort of talked myself out of not wanting to kill, so eventually I started to fish. Yeah, so I came in with a strong habit that thought, I need to protect life, but because of my attachment to hanging out with my dad, I sort of overpowered that and then developed a new habit.
No, but I'm not talking about habit that or something that is like you are socialized and then get habits.
Talking about character.
I'm talking about inherited behaviors.
Inherited behaviors is a little bit complex even from a scientific perspective. What is a genetic thing, a tendency towards depression you might have been born with, but for it actually to manifest, other conditions are at play. So it's not necessarily that you got it from your parents, it's that you already were like that. That's why you have those parents. You were already similar to each other before this life experience. Yeah? So not the other way around, right? They didn't give it to you. You were drawn to them because you guys were already similar. Yeah, you already have, which is more confronting, right? Because it's nice to blame our parents. But but to think you already were a little bit similar to them, hence why you were all drawn together this particular lifetime. It's an interesting thing to think about. So, it could be that you have the karma to be a big, strong, black man, right? Big, strong black man karma, but you're born into a white family as a girl, because, so, okay, that's not going to ripen this life, right? This life, a different karma ripened, because you had a whole array of options, but you could only kind of ripen the ones that the conditions of this life were together for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, although it's still a little bit contradicts for me, because still, again, a mind goes through a path and behavior is part of the mind.
Yeah.
But still, I can understand, but still it doesn't...
This is beginningless life we're talking about, and the idea that human beings are very, very different from one another, they're not, right? People aren't especially different from one another. There's some details, there's some cultural things, there's stuff we learn in this life, but we're really more common, than we like to admit. And so a lot of the behaviors we've had for a long time. And some of them are new, right? Some of them are new too. So it's always a coming together. So don't get confused. There's a difference between substantial cause and the conditions, right? But both of them have a strong influence. But the substantial cause is always coming from you, right? Always. But it can only ripen as experience when it meets with conditions. Yeah. So karma is one of the most complex things. Emptiness is easier to realize than karma. Karma is extremely hidden. Only a Buddha sees all of the complexities of a karmic event, right? It takes omniscience to see all the way down the rabbit hole to every single cause and every single condition that brought about a moment. Emptiness is complex, but it's actually easier to realize than karma. Even though conversationally karma sounds easier. It's do good things, you get happy, do bad things, you get sad. It's really not that basic, right? It's just in popular culture it's that basic because people are a little lazy, right? So know that it's a much bigger topic than it seems on the surface.
And another thing, another question. I guess this is a basic question, but since I'm a beginner, I don't really understand.
Yeah, go for it. Sure. Go for it.
Okay. Nirvana means that you're in a state of mind that there is no thinking and no feeling, thought? No?
No, nirvana is a state of mind where there is no suffering.
Okay.
Where there is no suffering. Peace. So peace isn't nothing. Peace is peace.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're not trying to eliminate thought with any of these, right? We're trying to de-emphasize. You will think forever, right? For a really long time. There will be so much going on in your mind for a really long time. You're consciously shifting focus. Like if you were watching, say you were watching some TV program, some cop show, right? And in the cop show, there's the two main characters having a conversation. So that's where your eyes go normally, is the people talking. But in the background, there's some extras, maybe someone eating an ice cream cone, someone buying a sandwich. And you could choose to then look at those guys, eating the ice cream cone. So there's still the people in the front that are talking, that is where you're used to focusing. But you're choosing to look at that guy eating ice cream. So it's a harder choice because that's less interesting and you're not as used to doing it and it's not as loud, but you could. And it doesn't mean that those people stop talking, right? So similarly with your mind, it's like the different pieces are still doing their thing, but you're consciously shifting where you place your focus. And then sometimes what happens is talking people talk less and slower and less grumpy. And they kind of, so in your mind is a cop show, I don't know. But so that's what we're talking about. Yeah, it's not going squash, nothing. No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a question about the technicalities of meditation, and I was wondering why sitting meditation is a default one. From my own personal experience, and maybe it's just me, but I feel that having to sit still without doing anything, even something repetitive, just makes it much harder to actually focus and develop my concentration.
Yeah.
And I know there are walking meditations, so I was wondering how come like the default and the common used one is the sitting one?
Walking meditation is great.
Can you repeat the question?
No, I was asking about why is sitting meditation the one that we do the most when there's all different kinds of meditation, and sitting meditation, it seems to be the hardest, right? Yeah, is that your question? Yeah. So sitting meditation is, why is it hard? I guess, what's the hard part for it? Is it the actual physicality of sitting still is the hard part, or which?
I think it's just like, again, it's my own experience, but like sitting still just makes my mind like go off into different directions much more.
Yeah.
As opposed to if I had like something very repetitive I was doing, then which helps it focus.
Absolutely. And it might be that your personal practice gets more walking meditation. And it might be that when you do your own thing that you're going to need more tactile anchors in the beginning. It's some of it's just personality and learning style. It's not like better or worse. But there is a thing of when you sit still, it means you kind of hear it all rush to the surface. If you're walking along the boardwalk in Tel Aviv, you are aware of the ocean. But when you sit and look at it, it sort of roars to life, right? Similarly, right, if you're doing an activity, you still have all of your stuff going on back there, but you're kind of saying, not now, not now, not now, not now, not now. When you sit still, it all says, guess what I've been thinking about your whole life, right? And it just kind of floods you. And it can be really overwhelming because very rarely do we give ourselves the space to hear what we're saying to ourselves. So it's harder because of that, right? As soon as you sit still, you're listening more deeply, which is also why it's more powerful and more emphasized, but it also can then be more overwhelming. So if it's very overwhelming, doing something like just being very aware of the sensation of walking, being very aware of the sensation of eating, just kind of using basic everyday activities to anchor your mindfulness, that can get you settled enough so that when you do sitting meditation, things are a little bit organized and a little bit quieter. It's kind of like a preliminary to get you here. It can be its own practice. For some people, that is their practice. So if that works for you, go for it. Yeah, and lots of Zen retreats and Theravadan tradition retreats will teach you about walking meditation. We do sometimes in our tradition as well. It just is less common. So anyway, there's tons of stuff on it. But if you ever want to do a walking meditation session, we can do one sometime. Yeah, and it's easier if you have your own Dharma center. I almost thought to add walking meditation to this practice because it's part of the 4 close placements, but it's kind of a weird area to do walking meditation, and then a car is going to hit you, and it just seemed like not quite the right place to do it. So one of these days we should talk about walking meditation. Yeah.
What do you call or what do you include phenomena?
Well, we haven't gotten there, so the fact that it's not clear is fine. Yeah. We're doing it today.
Will you say a bit before?
Yeah, and when we say phenomena, it depends on the context, because phenomena could mean everything, right? Just everything. And it could mean everything in the context of everything comes from the mind. Yeah, and so everything in a worldly sense, or everything in the spiritual sense. When we're doing close placement on phenomena, we're looking at the individual mental factors. Yeah, so we already did one of the mental factors, feeling, because that's the most problematic. But when we do close placement on phenomena, later we're looking at the other mental factors. And there's, heaps more.
Emotions would be also mental factors?
Yeah, yep.
That's hard to get.
Yep. Yeah.
Can you enlarge the difference between detached and disengaged?
Yeah.
One is good, one is bad.
Yes.
So, what is really the difference in why is different from the other?
The difference between detached and disengaged. Detachment means not with attachment, right? Not with attachment. Attachment in Buddhism doesn't mean the same thing as the world, right? Attachment in Buddhism means you think that the good things are good all by themselves. And it can lead you to think the bad things are bad all by themselves. But really we're looking at, kind of good things with attachment. So good things, good people, good situations, the things that you like, when you have attachment towards them, you see only the good parts and you forget the whole picture, right? When you have attachment present, you see the good things isolated from the rest of the story, right? There's a whole other story, and attachment forgets the rest of the story. Attachment also thinks that things are stable and permanent, right? Yeah, that the good things that arise can somehow have a lasting effect, which we know isn't the case, right? So there's a built-in exaggeration either of the way the good qualities exist or how important they are, right? So, like you see a good thing and you decide, I absolutely need that or I can't survive. Yeah. And so this is why we do some meditations on like ugliness and things when we're attached, is because it reminds us of the whole picture. And then our mind balances. If you have aversion, you don't do that meditation, right? It's going to make it worse. But when you're very, very attached to, say a holiday that you're planning, okay? And you think about how beautiful the sights are and how amazing the hotel will be and what a good time you and your friends will have, it's very easy for attachment to sneak in and decide how perfect it could be. And then when you go, life is never that tidy, and then you're disappointed, right? And this is why attachment is so negative, is that when attachment doesn't get what it wants, then anger comes, or sadness comes. And so attachment would be fine if it always got what it wanted, but because attachment is flawed and is lying to us, it can never achieve exactly what it wants, right? And so as soon as attachment figures out that what it wants isn't what it's going to get, you dissolve into another negative emotion like anger or sadness. So, if you'd plan the same holiday thinking, okay, I have that one friend who always needs a huge sleep in the middle of the day, and I have that other friend who always argues with taxi drivers, and and this hotel might not be quite as clean as I would like because it's cheap or blah, blah, blah. You're being realistic, right? If you're being realistic and being open-minded, then you can enjoy the holiday, right? So letting go of attachment, being detached, doesn't mean being unhappy. It means more happiness is possible because you've anchored your plan on less specific things. You've opened it right out. Yeah? That mind that you have when you're just like, let's see what happens. Yeah? And you just sort of enjoy whatever comes up. As opposed when you've planned it really, really tightly and gotten really, really controlled about this is how it should be, this is how it must be. That tightness traps your mind in a way that joy can't arise then, unless exactly that plan happens. Yeah, attachment makes us excessively specific, right, about what can and can't bring happiness. So being engaged means you're fully in the present, right? Being engaged means fully in the present, and so not disengaged. We're not disengaged, we're detached. Meaning we're detached from attachment. Yes, but we're totally engaged. What is happening in this moment? What does this moment's potential have? Yeah, so it's like you've leaned forward into life with, wide open, curious eyes. Yeah, like a kid in a new place. Like, what's going to happen? It's an openness. So, we want to be detached, but not disengaged. Disengaged is like, I don't care. Yeah. Detached would mean, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Apathy. Yeah. That's not what we want. But they're very different, right? Yeah. And we already have experiences of both of them and how one is useful and how one isn't. We just haven't necessarily named it this way before, right? When you've been in the right state of mind, and when you've been in the afflicted state of mind.
The mentally detached from the attachment.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. exactly. So if you hear in Buddhism detachment is a good thing, they're saying non-attachment. Yeah. Attachment bad, right? Because it ruins your peace, not your bad. And it doesn't mean a basic liking or preferences necessarily. It's not I want to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. That want is attachment. It's not that simplistic, right? Attachment necessarily has that association of exaggerating. Yeah, and the exaggeration shows itself to be flawed and you're disappointed. Yeah, so always it carries with it the potential for disappointment. And the feeling of attachment when you're in it, it's like the difference between two kinds of happiness, right? Like sugar high happiness, where you're like excited, right? And you're really wound up and you're really thinking very quickly about things in a kind of hungry way. This is going to happen and then that's going to happen. And, you're kind of excited, like sugary, as opposed to like happiness and contentment, which is like when you've had a very healthy, delicious meal that's digesting well, right? And you're just like, that was great. Yeah, that steady, content mind. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so attachment makes you unstable. And just like sugar, you peak and then you crash. Right? Whereas happiness, you enjoy the happiness and maybe it finishes, but you don't necessarily go flunk. You're just like, then maybe back to neutral and then something else. Right? So attachment disturbs the peace really actively. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you please explain if there is a difference between emotions and feelings?
We don't use the word emotion very often because it's too broad. Feeling, in a way, is broad in the same way, but it's not quite the same as emotion in English. Like, for example, so feeling is just the basic pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, right? But then there are other what we call mental factors, okay? And so mental factors can be things like love, compassion, right? Which in the West we would call emotions, maybe. But then there are other things like discrimination, right? Recognition, and intention, which are also mental factors. And you wouldn't really call your labeling process an emotion, would you? In English, right? It would be kind of weird. But for us, it's in the same category of things that are mental factors. Do you know what I mean?
So feeling is just pleasant and neutral.
Yep.
While all the rest is under the mental factors category.
Feeling is also a mental factor, right? Feeling is also a mental factor. So I guess the distinction I'm making is what is the difference between a mental factor and an emotion? Maybe emotion is a smaller list and mental factors is a larger list. Yeah. So all of the things we would call emotions would go under mental factors, but also there are more things besides emotions that go under mental factors.
But feelings also go under.
Yes.
So what they're influenced, that's you like understand.
The difference between
Feeling, emotions, they both go under the same.
It's a different way of classifying the mind, right? When we say emotion, it has that connotation of like a feeling plus another mental factor, whereas Buddhism pulls them apart and classifies them separately, right? Like, so if you say I'm feeling happy, you're saying I'm having the emotion of happiness, yeah? And we would say there's probably more happening simultaneously than just that, yeah? So in any moment, you have at least 5 mental factors happening. Yeah, but you wouldn't say I'm having 5 emotions happening at the same time, would you? That would be weird. Right, so it's just a different way of classifying the mind.
So why the feeling has been put in a separate
It's just the most problematic mental factor for us. Because of feeling, then all sorts of things happen that don't have to. Right, so we pull that out as a troublemaker mental factor that doesn't have to be a troublemaker anymore if we can really identify it, right? So on its own, it's not causing trouble, but because of our relationship with it, it does. So when we feel pleasant, then we associate that with I need more of it. Yeah, so as soon as you have pleasant, then you have attachment. And you don't need to. We're trying to break that association. You can just feel a pleasant feeling without it getting into crazy town, right? You can just feel unpleasant. You can have an unpleasant feeling, but it not lead to aversion. Yeah? You can just be with it, right? And so we focus on that to realize that you can break the association between just a simple feeling and what you decide about it. Yeah. Does that clarify it? Yeah, so I mean, emotion is just kind of, it's a different way of looking at the mind, and we say there's kind of more going on than that. It's maybe too simple. Yeah.
Could you elaborate that? I just want to continue, Sarah.
Yeah.
With the example that you gave yesterday about the heavy traffic, for example. So one way is really all the influence of the feelings.
Yeah.
The same way, in my mind, it also influences my emotion. If I feel about heavy traffic, I'm kind of sad, nervous, or because of labeling or whatever. Yeah. So I agree with Sarah. Especially in Hebrew, feeling and emotion is the same word.
Yeah, and it is in English too. Yeah, it's in Tibetan. It's not, right?
feeling זה תחושות ורגשות.
תחושות is sensation.
Sensation. And occasionally feeling is translated as sensation. Sometimes feeling is translated in English as sensation. And it's kind of somewhere in between. Because sensation sounds only physical, right? And it can be mental as well. So that's why we don't always translate feeling as sensation. But, if you were to find a bridge between feeling and sensation, that would be closer to the Tibetan word. Have you heard that old saying that, Eskimos in Alaska have 200 words for snow, right? Right, or whatever, right? Tibetans have words like that for different states of mind. So it's like emotion is not specific enough, right? So we are talking about things we would say are emotions in some sense, but it's like it's not specific enough. We say, okay, yes, that is happening, but also this is happening, and that is happening, and this is happening, and that is happening. And so to call those all emotions is funny, but they kind of come together to make what we call an emotion, perhaps.
So semantically, you separate that into mental factors.
Yes.
But mental factors are also factors that are causing attachment or whatever.
Yeah.
So
what is the problem?
More or less the same as feeling, isn't it?
No. No. Yes,
feeling. Technically,
yes.
When we meditate, what we are doing here, the exercise and everything, our main goal is to first of all identify the feeling, in a way, and then transform it into something that will make us be unattached and won't influence us in a bad way.
Yeah.
That's our aim.
Yeah.
To set us free from a special...
So by seeing that it's changeable, by seeing it's not inherently existent, by seeing that it's selfless, you unlock yourself from the negative tendencies that you carry with feeling or with body.
And what do you transform it into, actually? Does it always...
It's not a transforming into, it's a transforming out of.
Okay.
Yeah. So, right? You don't have to add anything new. It's like if you stop making a mess, it's clean. You don't have to add cleanliness.
Or something instead. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, if you clean it up, it's clean. Yeah.
About the last meditation, the main mind meditation, I think it was my first time I ever tried to heard about a meditation on the main mind, so it was kind of strange, nice and strange. And I think it felt like doing a meditation as opposed to a specific object, or as opposed to the mindfulness that you just sit and see what's coming up. The object is a non-object. I felt like that, and because it's new, I would like to understand a little bit. It's too wide. Right?
It's coming, right? So questions about what we've done so far, and then I'll do a little presentation on mind and phenomena, right? Yeah. So just kind of tidying up what we've done so far, and then stay tuned. There's like a presentation on mind and phenomena coming. Shuki.
Again with emotions.
Yeah. Number 1, number 2 is cool. Yeah. Emotions, something. Oh, I don't care.
Well, I'm inquiring that I ask that every teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be specific, that emotions like disappointment, what we call emotions, disappointment, anger, what else?
Fear.
Happiness is also emotion.
Fear, whatever.
Yeah.
The list.
Yeah, the list.
On the list.
Yeah. Shuki has a chart.
There are many.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are many in this psychological world.
Yeah, we have 84,000. Yeah. We win. No, I'm kidding. Go on.
So you put all of them under the title of mental factors?
I think perhaps it's the time for the presentation, I'm feeling, yes. So are there any questions about body and feeling? And then I'll explain about mind and phenomena. Yes.
A year ago,
yes.
Thanks to this device, you gave us a chart of the 51 mental factors.
Yeah.
The first one, the first group is called only present factors.
Yes.
And the first of this group is called feeling.
Yes.
There is a definition what is feeling in this chart. I won't read it now.
You can read it, read it.
What's that?
Read it, read the technical one.
So feeling is an entity of experience individually experiencing the fruition of virtuous and non-virtuous actions. Its objects are pleasure, pain, and neutrality. So this is the definition of feeling anyway in Tibetan Buddhism. Okay. And then there is other things like discrimination, intention, contact, mental engagement.
That's coming. Don't jump ahead. Don't jump ahead, that's coming. It's coming.
So there's a whole list here.
It's a list.
Yeah.
This
So
module number 1.
But
that's what we started off with.
And so I guess, the point I'm trying to make here is not that we don't believe in emotions, right? We just don't call them that. Because we have a bigger list that's more specific, right? So we're not like negating emotions. Of course, there are what we call emotions, but there's more to the story, and that particular term is not as specific as we want to be, because we're trying to really touch something experientially, and that emotion is a bit, ambiguous, because what we call emotion is usually several mental factors coming together. What we call emotion in English, or maybe in Hebrew, or in the West in general, Buddhism calls several different mental factors coming together. So we're pulling them apart so that we have more control over them. And maybe this is part of the issue, right? Maybe this is why Tibetans are so happy, even though they've lost their homeland, right? Is that perhaps they don't kind of smoosh it all together and think there's just this one thing happening that I have no control over, right? They don't think that because they know about minds and mental factors. So they think, okay, where's the troublemaker today? It's you. Okay, what influences you? Let's work on it, Because of being able to pull it apart, they have more control, so we can as well. Yes.
In the paper you gave us,
yes,
the final purpose about the purpose of feelings. The final purpose is to eliminate feelings as the basis of pleasure for the self.
Yes.
Eliminate the feeling, or eliminate the circumstance of the feeling.
The way, not the feeling itself.
So
but it's eliminating thinking of it as the self. Because it's very easy to think I am feeling. We don't phrase it that way in our head, but if you think, who am I? Often your first thought is how you feel, right? And we're trying to move to something more subtle than that there is more to the story.
Bridge. Is there a way to bridge between the attachment by Buddhist way the psychological attachment that we use, because in attachment in psychologically sometimes good.
Yes. It would be easier if we just used a different word. Yeah, but English doesn't have enough words. So attachment from a psychological perspective, and I'm not a psychologist. I work with a lot of psychologists, right? And I grew up with a lot of psychologists, but I am not a psychologist on purpose. But I think it has great value. And attachment in the Western psychology perspective is similar to how we define love in Buddhism. Similar. Right? But so love in Buddhism is the wish for others to have happiness. Right? The wish for others to have happiness. Then the behavior that comes from that state of mind will be things like, warmth. Yeah, warmth, connection, helping people find meaning and purpose and cohesion in their family. All those kind of behaviors that flow from it are similar to what Western psychology calls, having sort of appropriate attachments. So it's similar to how we describe love, but I think sometimes is in psychology a bit more loaded with things that might wind up being negative, but maybe not. Depends, right? Because if you interview 5 different psychologists, you probably get 5 different definitions of what attachment is too. So when you're talking about it, how do you describe the Western psychology good form of attachment? How would you describe it?
I'm very occupied with trying to think how is it to love without attachment? Because it's very...
Yeah, exactly. And that is really the question to have for your whole life, right? How to love without attachment. That's our project, right? That is our project. Yeah.
Isn't it that infant that has a good attachment, attachment, will need less attachment in the bed, meaning to grow up? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like that. So if you sort of flood the baby with love, then it feels love more easily and it has less weird behaviors as an adult. Yeah.
In psychology, we make kind of definition: secure attachment, attachment, ambivalent, disorganized.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
Which influences a lot of person.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's a useful worldview and framework. Yeah, it can go together with Buddhism, so long as you don't think that they're the same thing, because they're not quite the same thing. They're like 2 different tools that both work, right? They're 2 different tools that both work. So if you're using 2 different tools, you will become quite healthy with those 2 tools. But if you try to mush together and say they are the same tool, you will sort of lose the impact of both. Do you know what I mean? Right? So it's kind of like... if you're trying to run, if you're running is good exercise, if you're swimming is good exercise, but running and swimming is sort of weird, right? I'm sure that's also good exercise, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? Like they're different things. And there's bits of crossover, right? And I mean, my job is to teach psychologists, right, about Buddhism so that they become psychoanalysts that know about Buddhism. But what they're doing is psychoanalysis. They're not doing Buddhism. They're doing psychoanalysis that's informed by their knowledge of Buddhism. So it's in the background of their worldview, not what they're actually saying to their patients. What they're saying to their patients is just the structure of psychology and the format of that particular school of thought, but kind of what they bring to it as an individual is based on the transformation they've done with Buddhism. So we have to be a little bit delicate and not kind of like cut corners and smooshing. No smooshing. Even though there are some obvious bridges. Yeah.
That's what I'm occupied, because psychology, the main issue is feelings. To give a place to feelings, to jump into it. So how do I bring this whole a different attitude of feelings into the clinic?
And it is tricky. It's like, in a way, it's like stages of development. Okay, so when you're feeling really fragile, when you're really unwell, what do you need? You need a lot of space to see all of your feelings, right? Because you're a bit cut off from them. You might be ashamed of them. You might feel all sorts of self-loathing because of them. So when you're fragile, the strategies of psychology of just let's talk about it, all of it. Let's dig in, let's explore it, let's find all about it. That strategy is very healing because a lot of the problem is being disassociated from them or squashing them or all those things, right? So for a fragile person, kind of being flooded with acceptance about their feelings is very healing, right? To say, oh, you feel like you want to kill your mother? That's fine. You feel like that's fine. That's perfectly understandable. That's fine, right? At that stage, that is very healing and useful. Right? And what you're saying is, you're normal, you're fine, it's workable, right? But the actual words you're saying is, of course, yeah, sure. You're holding a really accepting space. Now, once someone is less fragile, you can say, well, it doesn't matter if you want to kill your mother, don't, right? That feeling, which isn't really a feeling, right? The feeling of unpleasant that leads to anger when you see your mother and then have the intention to kill her, right? It's many things coming together, but we could say feeling. You would say, all right, so anger is a negative state of mind. Yeah, anger, the wish to harm, is a negative state of mind. So let's look at your unpleasant feeling when you meet your mother. It doesn't actually have to lead to the conclusion of anger or I'm going to kill her. Let's really combat anger and beat it up because you are not your anger, right? You are not your anger. So let's explore I can feel an unpleasant response when I see her, but it doesn't have to lead to the wish to harm or a plan.
The past is probably compassion.
Yeah, compulsion, we could say karma.
Compassion. If you teach compassion.
Yeah. If you teach compassion, then?
Maybe.
Then no problem. Yeah, then no problem. Right, like that. Yeah. So it's just looking at levels of development, right? So at a certain level, a certain approach is what's going to be healing. And if you jump to the advanced form of the healing before you're ready, it's not going to work, right? And for us, I know you all well enough to think that you're stable enough to try this, but we don't know what's lurking under the surface, right? It might be that you were fine until you started, right? And now it's like, and you might need to ring your therapist when you go home. And that's okay, right? And that's okay, right? They can work together, yeah.
I like very much what you said about the troublemaker. So to identify the troublemaker, and then besides impermanent and
empty, selfless, yes.
What else can be a tool
to kick out the troublemaker or stop him causing trouble? Right now, we're just using the strategy of seeing the impermanence, seeing the selflessness, seeing the emptiness, because that's the format of this retreat. But in other retreats, it would be like, what is the way to reframe the way you see harm? Yeah, reframing, which we would call mind training in Buddhism, right? What's a way to see?
By transforming.
Yeah, and it's a whole other technique. Which also works, right? So in other retreats, we might be looking at Lozang, mind training. So this is when you sort of see, you get into a very advanced way of thinking that thinks all of the trouble I want. All of the difficult people, welcome, because without them I won't transform. But that's when you're feeling quite secure, right? Yeah, and you're like, okay, yes, difficult people come, but because you know that it makes you transform in a way that if everything is easy, you just kind of blob out and become lazy. So that's a fun retreat to do that we should do sometime too. Mind training retreats. Yeah, both. Yeah, it's the same word in Tibetan. Lozang. It's transform. It's.
She looks for the internet.
She will find many things under both translation choices. But Lozang in Tibetan, that's probably easier. Yeah. So
that would be the next retreat.
Well, if you request, we can do. Mind training is great, and so that's another technique to work with the troublemaker. Other things that we do, Tantra, which is using a lot of visualization and a lot of mantras and internal energy work and these things, that's another way. So there's all these techniques to kind of bring it into control and bring it into awareness. And they all work. And what you decide to use is really based on what your personality is telling you today is going to be the useful thing. So during retreat, it's kind of like you're getting good enough at all these strategies to kind of like put in your pocket for home. And then when you're home, you go, today is a this kind of day, and you pull it out and use it. And it might be that of all of the things we've done, you only pick one to actually do at home every day to get really strong and deep with, and the rest of them just kind of hang out as options in case of emergencies.
Wired in our brain.
Yeah. And you kind of need to do retreat to get it like planted well enough to make it yours. So you could actually use it by yourself without being led, or if you came across something on the internet, it wouldn't confuse you too much because you've done it together in a group and with a teacher. So, so the work you're doing here is like the beginning, and it's also really going to bring a lot of experience into your daily life that you won't even know until you start again. Yeah, you'll be living your life and being like, wow, look at how many times a day I go for that cup of tea. Do I really need 8 cups of tea? Right? I can have a cup of tea, take a minute to relax, but is the tea really the thing that makes me happy? You might start to catch yourself in your daily life doing repetitive things and kind of unhooking a little bit from a lot of them. Look at the way I give that guy all the power to disturb my day when I see him at work. Yeah, actually, I have some control over that. I could just feel the unpleasantness arise when I see his face and do something different. It'll start to kind of like infiltrate into the day. Yeah. So are you ready for mind and phenomena, or do you have other feeling questions and body questions? Feeling and body. Good, ready? Excellent, okay. So, close placement on the mind. All right, so that's number 3, close placement on the mind. And we did one version of it this morning, which is just to try and find. Oh, thank you. And so when you're looking for the mind, it is a little bit, like you were saying, a no thing, but it's not a non thing. It's the reflective aspect of the mind. And perhaps, if you've never done this meditation before, your closest experience of it might be on a day that you were very relaxed and didn't have a lot to do and were maybe looking outside without a lot of obvious word thoughts. Those days when you're very relaxed, sitting quietly, maybe looking at a view, and there are thoughts there, but you're not having a lot of really specific sentences go through your head. Yeah, but it's not like you're sleeping. Yeah, you know that kind of spacious feeling on a calm day? Is anyone lost? You've never had a calm day in your life?
You mean gazing, but not focused?
Yeah, not spaced out, right? Like not just vagued out, but when you're just kind of like contentedly watching the world go by. Maybe you have a cup of tea.
Very peaceful. No.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That difference in that quality of the mind? So what we're talking about is a bit like that, right? That's just very clear, very spacious. And what the main mind is doing, that we usually don't see it doing, but it's just reflecting like a mirror what's happening. Yeah, it's not having judgments about what it reflects. Yeah? It's like, okay, bowl, okay, paper, okay, microphone. And there's other things that are deciding what all of that means.
The microphone is still there? The name is there?
Yeah, in a kind of passive way. Not the word so much. The word is coming from discrimination.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, the word is coming from discrimination, but the appearance of it, the general sense of it, like babies can identify between things in a vague way, but they don't have words for them. Something in my way. Something that is mum. I don't know. But it's like the main mind is observing but not labeling. Other things are labeling, other things are feeling things, other things are deciding I want more, I don't, That's the quality of mental factors. Mental factors are doing all of the kind of movement in the mind. But the main mind aspect just sees it, right? So main mind, so we have 6 main minds, all right? So main mind, or primary consciousness, is just seeing form, right? It just sees form, and it doesn't care so much about the details, even though it observes the details. But the mental factors within primary consciousness decide, that's a house with windows, I like that house, I wonder who lives there, I feel some nice memory about it, blah, 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 right? So you're not trying to shut one thing down and wake one thing up. You're letting them both do what they want, but it's the reflective aspect that you're trying to find.
You're talking about bare awareness?
You can call it bare awareness, yeah. Some traditions call it bare awareness. Yeah, but to know there's 6 types, right? The 5 related to the senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, right? And then mental primary consciousness. And mental primary consciousness is the one that we're trying to work towards in the meditation. So when we did close placement on the body, we weren't doing so much focus on primary main mind, We were doing sense powers, which are the subtle form that live in the organs. Right? So when we did that meditation, of course the primary consciousnesses were involved, but we weren't focusing on them there. Okay, so close placement on the mind is the mental primary consciousness, sometimes called the bare awareness. It's the simplistic form of the meditation is good old sky, not the clouds. Right? Sky, not the clouds. So if you think about the sky as a whole, there is always some sort of weather there, but you're choosing not to look at the cloud part. You're choosing to look at the blue part. The reflective part. Now, just finding it and stabilizing your concentration on it is very soothing, is very good for your concentration, right? Just that is good for you. And so even that basic part of the meditation is useful to come to, you're just having a busy day at work. It looks like you're staring at your computer screen, but really you're having a moment. All right, back to the bare awareness, back to the main mind, just connecting there. And the thing is that there is no moment of primary consciousness without an object. Right? You don't experience mind without mind experiencing an object, whether a mental object or a sensory object. So you can't sort of run over the top of or disassociate from that truth, right? You're just not giving it interest. And the word interest is a very useful one to start using in meditation. Because when you're interested in something, it kind of helps you think of the way you're trying to focus, right? You could be reading this text with interest or reading this text without interest, right? If there's a different feeling in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, or oh really, right? It's a different way of focusing. So when I say in the meditations, give your interest to, I'm still saying give your focus to, give your attention to, but it's the way of focusing. Be interested in it. Be curious about it. You don't have to have any words about it. You're just going very deeply to it, trying to absorb in it. So that's the single-pointed concentration way of meditating on close placement of the mind. Find it, settle on it, be interested in it, hold it, all of that. And that actually is quite a simple instruction. It's a difficult thing to get to the first few times, but the instruction itself really, that's, you guys understand, right? Just find that part, settle on it, stay. You with me?
It's like the space between the
thoughts.
The thoughts.
Yeah.
The space.
Or behind. Yeah.
When you say this, I saw sky.
Yeah.
And then it's also an object, right?
I mean, you could have an impression of sky to kind of get you into the right frame of mind. Yeah.
So I can concentrate on this.
The appearance of blueness and appearance of skyness to get you into the right frame of mind for what you're looking for might be good, like preliminary, but at some point just kind of let go of any visualized impressions and try and just rest back there in that reflection. Yeah, so it might be a good way to get you into the right way of thinking, and so using it is good in the beginning, and then move back to something more subtle. Yeah, does that make sense?
More subtle is no object, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and as long as it's not a vague, spaced out nothing there. If it's a spacious, reflective nothing there, that's different.
What's the difference?
And you might just have to play with it. It's hard to put into words, but that's why I describe the situation of looking at the sky with your cup of tea on a relaxed day when you're awake, but not having a lot of thoughts in words. That's getting close to what I'm talking about. When you're quite alert, right? A day, you're relaxed, but quite alert, but you're not busy that day, and you're not worried that day. So you're just kind of looking at stuff.
Pure and clean.
Yeah.
Like that, without too much.
And the thoughts kind of thread through, you might have there's a car, but it's not one of those busy days when the mind is overwhelmed with words and overwhelmed with emotions. That's kind of getting you into a little bit of what I'm talking about, where you are reflective, you are seeing things, you are observing things are appearing to your mind, but your opinions are softer. Yeah, your opinions are softer. It's the part of the mind where opinions aren't even specifically there. They sometimes use an example of the main mind will see a house and the mental factors see the windows and doors. Right? Now, of course, the main mind sees the house too, but it's talking about kind of the way they function. So you can meditate on the main mind even if you're having a very busy, chatty day in your head. But getting yourself to that part of the mind might take longer, right? So you just kind of, okay, there's the thoughts, don't follow them. There's the thoughts, don't follow them. And it's part of the reason why most meditations we start with meditating on the breath, because meditating on the breath helps you with distraction. So it kind of gets the volume to turn down on the thoughts. Yeah, it kind of helps them digest a little and settle a little so that when you do your next part of the meditation, you're not so unsettled. Yeah.
It feels like there is a main consciousness and the other six.
And then
the other six comes up.
When? In life or in meditation?
In meditation.
Yep, yeah, probably like that. And just say, okay, the other five I'm not giving attention to today.
Because it looks like it comes into
they take turns having dominance, right? Your 6 primary consciousnesses take turns having dominance, and we're used to just letting them decide who's in charge. Okay, I is in charge, nose is in charge, mental is in charge. What we're trying to do is to say, you 5 coarse sensory consciousnesses, I'm not really giving you any energy. I'm going to the mental primary consciousness. But of course, then you'll hear something and you'll jump to what you hear, or, other things will pull you off and you just go, anyway, right? And you just kind of keep doing that approach with your distractions. Yeah, you're just like, yep, that's happening, and back. So you're not pretending it's not happening. That's not what we want to do. We're not blocking. We're just going, yep, I hear that leaf blower, and we're coming back. So you can touch the distractions, but then just keep coming back to yourself. Or, there's that old worry. Yep, I hear you, old worry. I'll come back to you anyway. Yeah.
It sounds now that it is like the regular mindfulness that you recognize what you are hearing or seeing.
When you're distracted.
Not reacting to it like nice, pleasant, unpleasant.
Yeah.
I thought at the beginning you said that we shouldn't even label it.
Yeah, this is okay. We're getting tangled. Okay, so I'm talking about the approach to distractions. Right? So when you're doing this meditation, if you're not being distracted by the other 5 consciousnesses, don't do what I'm saying. right? Right? Yeah. Just be in the non-labeling aspect of the mind, right? But you will get distracted, right? I will be very surprised if you don't get distracted, right? So when you do get distracted, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I would like to add to remain with Neve's question, because it seems to me like the main mind is observing the six,
like the five,
and the thoughts.
And the thoughts. It's responding to them, definitely, but it doesn't have to, is the point. Right? You could just be in main mind, right? And not sort of let it pop into. So what you're describing is, it sort of feels like you have one person here that takes turns engaging with different senses, when in fact there are six and they take turns amongst themselves. But it happens so quickly, we don't realize it's like that.
And what about the thoughts?
The thoughts go under the category of the sixth, right? Yeah, the main mind has thoughts as its object, right? It's not the thoughts, but that's where thoughts hang out.
Yeah, so then the main mind is like, if the thoughts are like the clouds, and there is a main mind that is observing the thoughts.
Then,
the blue sky.
Yeah.
And the clouds are the five senses?
No.
And,
No. So it's like you have six skies. Yeah, like that. Yeah. That's a little bit tricky. Or you've divided the sky into six, maybe, like that. This meditation is far simpler than you're making it, okay? So this is actually like one of the really easy ones, okay? So, all right. But when we talk about main minds and mental factors, it's an important topic, like it's a really important topic, but the meditation is actually a very simple meditation. The topic is complex, and a lot of you have done Mind in Its Potential, so I was just kind of jumping to the meditation. So it's all on the YouTube, Mind in Its Potential. But it's a good conversation to keep coming back to, so I don't want to shut it down because it's important. It is really important. But the meditation is just be with the bare, clear part of awareness, stay there. Thoughts will come, you go, yep, I don't care. Yep, I don't care. But, yep, I don't care.
It's like the 5 minutes meditation you said?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah. Don't overthink it, right? Yeah.
No, it's a good thing.
See all the pictures run out and we are just looking.
It's more like Tenzin Palmo has a really nice way of describing it. It's like if you're at a picture theater, right? And there's the movie, and you turn around and look at the light, right? So the pictures are still going through the light, but you don't care about the pictures. You're focused on the light, right? Like that. So I like that analogy. It's a nice one, Nate. Yeah. Venerable Rabina likes fish in the sea, right? So there's the sea, and then there's the fishes, and the fishes will keep swimming around, but you don't care about the fish. You're being with the water, right? Like that. Or the cafe and the people, right? Here's another analogy, right? So Sunday afternoon, sitting in a cafe, or Saturday afternoon, we're in Israel. Saturday afternoon, sitting in a cafe, reading the paper. People are coming in and out of the cafe. You're aware of the people coming in and out of the cafe. But but because they're Israeli, right? But you're not standing up and putting your paper down and going to talk to each person that comes into the cafe. But part of you is kind of casually aware of them, like, funny hat, anyway, right? So it's. Do you get what I'm trying to describe, right? That there are two things happening, but you're choosing to focus on the other thing, right? Not the thing that normally captures your attention, the other part.
Important skill.
It is.
For everyday life.
Amen, right?
No, really.
Yeah, so this is the meditation.
To do it with open eyes.
Yes, you can. Right? Yeah, good to do with open eyes, unless things are going to distract you. Yeah.
Just stare. Myself to ask, because in the last meditation, I think I was in that stage
but I felt what feeling is not the correct word now, but there's something behind.
And that's where your focus was?
I was in the space, and I felt there was even behind.
Interesting. And what was going on behind?
I didn't even want to go there.
Yeah.
I was enough to hold this nothing.
Yeah.
But there was a feeling.
Yeah, and it's probably all the rest of your mental factors just hanging out.
Trying to come
Yeah,
out.
yeah, and you say later.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was probably good. I think do it again. Again. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. So the idea of the meditation itself, but what informs the philosophy of the meditation is quite complex, but the meditation itself is pretty simple. Are you with me with how you would meditate on this? It's okay to ask more questions though if it's not quite clear. Yeah.
I'm remaining with what I do today is to look at the sky, to see a vast, spacious sky.
Yeah.
And just telling the other troublemakers to go away.
Yeah, and that is totally useful. So if that's all you have the space for today, do that. Excellent. Yofi.
Now I understand why people go on Saturday afternoon to the cafe and read newspapers.
This whole time. And then when we do close placement on phenomena, okay, then we're swapping, right? We're swapping from sky to clouds, but trying not to fall into the clouds. Yeah? So in both situations, they could start to feel very similar to each other, so you want to kind of keep a distinction. So when we do close placement on phenomena, we're talking about internal phenomena, and it's like looking at different weather patterns. You're like, some storm's brewing, but I'm not falling into the storm. Some bright, fluffy clouds, I'm not falling into the bright, fluffy cloud. You're observing the different kinds of weather. Yeah, so that's close placement on phenomena. You're switching.
Can you give an example for internal phenomena?
The mental factor of discrimination, which is saying, this is good meditation. All right, that's discrimination. Yeah. And then, you'll have kind of I want to get a cookie. Oh, that's intention. Yeah. And then,
it's not a feeling. I'm hungry.
No, but
it's the I want to. The I want to. The reason you want to is certainly related to feeling. See, and now you're getting how it's all interconnected, right? And it's helping you really understand that one moment's action isn't just one thing, right? It is very helpful in your life because you feel just kind of pulled to do stuff and it almost feels a little random. Yeah, and you realize, the reason I want the cookie is because I felt the discomfort of hunger, and I responded with attachment to sugar because I have a habit of blah, 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 right? And you don't even have to know the story. You're just coming awareness to, story again. Believe or don't believe. Believe or don't believe is the conclusion that you come to after the phenomena meditation, right? Is, okay, here is the weather that's coming into the mind. Now I have choice. Agree or disagree. Believe or disbelieve. Because I know that there is definitely parts of the story that have a mistake in them. Yeah?
So actually everything is a story.
Indeed. Indeed. Indeed.
There are change.
Yes.
Change.
So you see the story, you can change it.
And,
right? You see it.
Break it apart.
Yes.
But. Okay. If I want, you can say it also about water. If water is something that I really need, okay?
Yeah.
That is not just a story.
Okay.
But, okay, then still it's confusing because many things, sometimes things that are said here are contradicted for me because it's cookie and water.
Yes.
You can't say, okay, should I believe that I want water or not? If I won't drink any water, I will die, right?
It's not going against your common sense, right?
Water.
What we're trying to say is we're making your common sense even more brilliant. And I do want some water, thank you. We're making your common sense more wise, right? So already drinking water, good. Eating cookie, right? You already know that, right? You didn't need Buddhism to tell you that, right? So it's not contradictory common sense, right? What you're looking at is that it's not one thing that's driving you, and you use simple things that are easy, that you already know, to prove these things to yourself. So then when the big things come, like your relationships, right, like your worldview, like your politics, when these things come into your mind, you have space for objectivity. How many arguments are started because people think they are their opinions? Right? They think they are their ideas. So if you challenge their opinions and their ideas, you're challenging them, right? And then you fight. If you're just playing with ideas, it can be a beautiful conversation, right? And if you realize your opinions and your politics and your religion and your everything came about through all these causes and conditions, your response came from all these causes and conditions, you have less identity tied up with them. Yeah? And so then there's space to change if change seems wise, and there's space to hold to what you believed already, but with a nice open mind about it, right? So yeah, who cares about cookies and water? We're using things that we already know we can do. We can already discern good idea, maybe not good idea, right? But it becomes more complex in our daily life with things that actually make us angry, the things that make us attached, then worried and stressed, yeah.
And you also, you teach us here not to label the sentence of badly thinking, but the mind.
Say it again?
But you teach us to think about everything, not to label it, there is this sentence,
merely labeled by the mind. Merely labeled by the mind.
Yes.
I'm not saying don't label, I'm saying look where the label came from. It's totally different. Totally different. Yeah.
We need labels.
Yeah, you need labels. Yes, but you're trying to see where did it come from, right?
How are we going to talk if we don't have labels?
Yeah. So merely labeled by the mind doesn't mean stop labeling. No, not at all.
So the cookie is a bad label and the water is a good label?
Oh no. I failed.
No, it's my failure.
No one failed.
Cookie or water doesn't matter. Good cookie, bad cookie matters. If you see where good and bad came from, yeah, if you have more ability to pull apart need and not need, your choices become different, right? And when you understand impermanence, your choices become easier. Yeah, because you realize the way I feel about this cookie will change, actually. So, like I'm using cookies because I have a cookie problem, right? I love them. Yeah, they make me happy all by themselves, right? Now I have a big story about cookies in my head, right? So I know what happens if they're in my house, right? If a cookie is in my house, it's going in, right? And I'll open the package and I'll think, I'll just have one. I'll have one with my tea, that's all. And then I'll put it in a nice box and save it for later. Yes, that's what I say. And then when I open it, I think, well, just 4 though. That's fine because I didn't have morning tea and, right? So, but the problem is I start thinking about eating 4 while I'm still eating number 1. I haven't even fully enjoyed number 1 cookie, right? Cookie number 1 didn't get any importance to me. I was already thinking about cookie 4. And see, this is the issue, is that when I've been woken up to myself, I see how absurd I am, and I can put the box down, right? And it doesn't matter so much with these things, but it does matter with our relationships. Can we put the argument down? Yeah? Can we put the craving and obsession, can we put it down? Yeah? Can we stop letting the everyday stresses of life stress us? Everything changes in your mind if you approach your activities differently. The activities can stay the same. You don't have to change the activities of your life. You're changing your approach to them so they can give you more happiness and cause less bad behavior, right? So when you say merely labeled by the mind, it unhooks you from the belief that it's just as it seems. Because what your afflictions are saying, I need all 4 cookies for the happiness, right? Merely labeled by the mind makes you realize even cookie number 1 wasn't the happiness, it was just a condition. right? And other things might be better conditions. I could make a different choice. It's empowering, right? Some of this will be clear and some of this will be unclear. And just, my friend Cherny says, hold open the question. Just hold open the question. Don't decide, that contradicts. That's wrong. That's right. Just hold, I'm not totally clear about that. Just keep it open, because that means every time you go to class, you'll be able to listen for the answer and you'll hear it. You don't have to come to conclusions right away. And know that Buddhism never contradicts basic ethics. Buddhism never contradicts basic common sense. So if it seems to, probably something got lost. Yeah? Good old common sense, good solid ethics, that will remain a pervasive theme. Yeah. Does that help, or?
Yeah, okay.
Or do you follow, or you want to follow up? Any others? You're doing good work that you're pulling it apart like this. This is great. This is really great. Yeah, pull it apart. Yeah. But if at least when you pull it apart, it doesn't mean that you lose the ability to use the meditation technique, because now you've overcomplicated it. Yeah. Now we're just sky, not the clouds. Ready? Just plain hold.